warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today our group will present the topic titled The Members, Role and Function of Conference of Rulers and the Discretionary and Non-Discretionary Power of the YDPA. The introduction for this topic will be presented by Ms. Siti Zulshafika. Next, the members, role and function of Conference of Rulers will be discussed by Nur Alia Izzati. Then the discretionary and non-discretionary power of the YDPA will be discussed by Nur Farahin Najahah. And lastly, today's presentation will be concluded by Ainur Aina. First and foremost, the first Conference of Rulers after Merdeka was held on 2nd July 1985. The Conference of Rulers has been entrusted with a number of crucial constitutional concerns, including constitutional supremacy, rule of law, and Islamic guaranteed rights. The conference is in an excellent position to promote good administration and protect the social compact that this country was established on. Moreover, the Federal Constitution has a few provisions that cover the substance of the Conference of Rulers, including its members' responsibility and function. As example, Article 38 Clause 1 of the Federal Constitution states that a Majlis Raja-Raja, that is a Conference of Rulers, must be established in conformity with the 5th Schedule. Next, the Conference of Rulers' power were then outlined in Article 38 Clause 2 of the Federal Constitution. Then, the Conference of Rulers now act as a vital link between the federal government and those who represent Malaysia's many states. Its meetings, which are attended by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong and the Prime Ministers on behalf of the federal government, as well as all sultans and Yang di-Pertuan Negeri, as well as their respective Menteri Besar or Chief Ministers, provide a valuable opportunity to discuss real issues in private.
Thank you to Shafika for the introduction. Now, I am Nur Alia Izzati binti Hamizi will talk about the member of the Conference of Rulers. The Conference of Rulers in Malaysia is a council comprising the 9 rulers of the Malay states and 4 governors or Yang di-Pertuan Negeri of the other 4 states. It was officially established by Article 38 of the Constitution of Malaysia and is the only such institution in the world according to the Malaysian National Library. According to the rules, only His Majesty, the rulers are eligible to chair the meeting, and it is chaired according to the rotation in order as determined by the Council. This makes this meeting the highest meeting in Malaysia. The Deputy Prime Minister does not belong to the Conference of Rulers. Now, I will talk about role of the Conference of Rulers. Its main responsibility is the election in of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong and their deputy, the Timbalan Yang di-Pertuan Agong, which occurs every 5 years or when the position falls vacant. The example of Yang di-Pertuan Agong discretionary powers is Yang di-Pertuan Agong can to disagree with the request to dissolve Parliament. Yang di-Pertuan Agong may request that a conference of rulers be held solely on the privileged position, honor and greatness of His Majesty the rulers and take any action at such meeting. Yang di-Pertuan Agong can give medals and awards. Next, in carrying out its duties, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong shall act on the advice of the Cabinet or the Prime Minister. Yang di-Pertuan Agong reserve the right at its request to obtain any information on the governance of the Federation from the Cabinet. Yang di-Pertuan Agong is the Supreme Commander of the Federal Armed Force. Yang di-Pertuan Agong has the power to forgive and suspend sentence on all offences that have been tried by the court martial and all offences committed in the federal territories of Kuala Lumpur and Labuan. For the purpose of amnesty, an amnesty board should be established. The Amnesty Board consists of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, and at least 3 other members. Yang di-Pertuan Agong is responsible for preserving the special position of the Malays and Bumiputras in Sabah and Sarawak. Yang di-Pertuan Agong can appoint the Secretary General of the State, the Accountant General, the Auditor General, members of the Commission, the Prime Minister. Lastly, I will talk about functions of Conference of Ruler. There shall be a Majlis Raja-Raja which shall be constituted in accordance with the 5th schedule. The Public Service Commission shall consist of the following members appointed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong in his discretion but after considering the advice of the Prime Minister and after consultation with the Conference of Rulers. That is to say, a chairman and deputy chairman are not less than Agong by order, otherwise provides at seat 30.
Next, I would like to explain the conclusion, members, role, function of Conference of Ruler. In conclusion, there is no doubt that Yang di-Pertuan Agong is the highest position in our constitutional monarchy. Apart from that, we also know that these were created to make it easier for the voices and the rights of people to be heard. Next, the term advice of the cabinet usually refers to the Prime Minister recommendation. For instance, most of the powers of the king are exercised in accordance with the advice of the cabinet or minister acting under the general authority of the cabinet. Furthermore, function of Conference of Ruler is to make sure that there shall be Majlis Raja-Raja which shall be constituted accordance with the 5th schedule that consists of the following members appointed by Yang di-Pertuan Agong in his discretion but after considering the advice of the Prime Minister and after consultation with the Conference of Ruler, that is to say, a chairman and not less than Agong by order, otherwise provide exit 30. Finally, if each of the members of the Conference of Ruler made sure that they did their own duty very well, it made our constitution a successful organization that can achieve any goal.
In our constitutional monarchy, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong is the formal head of the executive branch. He is given a wide range of authorities under the constitution. He commands a great deal of respect and authority, yet he wields relatively little power. Article 40 Clause 1 and 40 Clause 2 Clause 1A of the Federal Constitution enable him to act on advice for the majority of his obligations. The Prime Minister is the real holder of political authority unless in exceptional situations. Besides, power and functions of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong can be divided into 3 categories. First, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong's general obligations to act on advice is defined by Article 40, Clause 2 of the Federal Constitution, which specifically puts discretionary powers in the Yang di-Pertuan Agong in specific areas. Second, most of the King's powers are exercised in accordance with the recommendation of the Cabinet or of a minister acting under general authorities of the Cabinet as stated in Article 40 Clause 1 and 40 Clause 1A of the Federal Constitution. The Prime Minister's suggestion is commonly referred to as advice of the Cabinet. In the third category, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong is a constitutional auditor as well as constitutional monarchy that is largely restricted by recommendations. In unique circumstances, his role to provide a guide and direction to the country cannot be neglected.
I am Nurul Farahin Najaha. The discretionary power of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong according to Article 40 Clause 1 of the Federal Constitution defines in the exercise of his functions under this Constitution or federal law, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong shall act in accordance with the advice of the Cabinet or of a minister acting under the general authority of the Cabinet, except as otherwise provided by this Constitution, but shall be entitled at his request to any information concerning the government of the Federation which is available to the Cabinet. Hence, Article 40, Clause 1A of the Federal Constitution defines, in the exercise of his functions under this Constitution or federal law, where the Yang di-Pertuan Agong is to act in accordance with advice, on advice, or after considering advice. The Yang di-Pertuan Agong shall accept and act in accordance with such advice. Next, Article 40 Clause 2 of the Federal Constitution defines the Yang di-Pertuan Agong may act in his discretion in the performance of the following functions, that is to say, A. The appointment of a Prime Minister, B. The withholding of consent to a request for the dissolution of Parliament, C. The requisition of a meeting of the Conference of Rulers concerned solely with the privileges, position, honours and dignities of their Royal Highnesses, and any action at such a meeting and in any other case mentioned in this Constitution. Article 40 Clause 3 of the Federal Constitution defines federal law may make provision for requiring the Yang di-Pertuan Agong to act after consultation with or on the recommendation of any person or body of persons other than the Cabinet in the exercise of any of his functions other than A. Functions accessible in his discretion, B. Functions with respect to the exercise of which provision is made in any other article. The Yang di-Pertuan Agong has various powers provided by the Federal Constitution. Firstly, the power to preserve the special position of the Malays and Bumiputras of the states of Sabah and Sarawak and to safeguard the legitimate interests of other races. Secondly, the head of the Islamic religion for his own state, Melaka, Penang, Sabah, Sarawak and the Federal Territory. Thirdly, the Supreme Commander of the National Armed Forces. Fourthly, the power to appoint the Prime Minister of Malaysia who has the confidence of the majority of the elected Dewan Rakyat, hence has the discretion to dissolve Parliament if the Prime Minister is no longer accepted by the people. Next, has the power to renew the appointment of a Prime Minister each time after an election until the Prime Minister decides to resign or lose a majority in the election. Lastly, has the power to appoint senior federal officials under the terms of the Constitution and various acts passed by the Parliament. Besides, the non-discretionary power of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong according to Article 34, Clause 1 of the Federal Constitution, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong shall not exercise his functions as ruler of his state except those of head of the religion of Islam. Secondly, Article 34, Clause 2 of the Federal Constitution defines the Yang di-Pertuan Agong shall not hold any appointment carrying any remuneration. Thirdly, Article 34, Clause 3 of the Federal Constitution defines the Yang di-Pertuan Agong shall not actively engage in any commercial enterprise. Fourthly, Article 34, Clause 4 of the Federal Constitution defines the Yang di-Pertuan Agong shall not receive any emoluments of any kind whatever payable or accruing to him as the ruler of his state under the provisions of the Constitution of that state or of any state law. Article 34, Clause 5 of the Federal Constitution defines the Yang di-Pertuan Agong shall not, without the consent of the Conference of Rulers, be absent from the Federation for more than 15 days except on a state visit to another country. Lastly, Article 34, Clause 8 of the Federal Constitution defines nothing in Clause 1 shall prevent the Yang di-Pertuan Agong exercising as ruler of his state any power vested in him either alone or in conjunction with any other authority, A. to amend the constitution of the state, or B. to appoint a regent or member of a council of regency in the place of any regent or member, as the case may be, who has died or has become incapable for any reason of performing the duties of the office of regent or member of the council of regency respectively.
Next, I pass the presentation to Ain Nur Aina. Lastly, the conclusion of the discretionary and non-discretionary power of Yang di-Pertuan Agong. In conclusion, the discretionary and non-discretionary that being held by Yang di-Pertuan Agong plays an important role such as appointing Prime Minister, dissolution of Parliament, convening the Conference of Ruler and any other case mentioned in this Constitution according to Article 40 Clause 2. Next, Yang di-Pertuan Agong, members of Conference, and all of the cabinet members, also parliament members, each of them has a big task, and if each members play their roles well and mobilize energy to ensure that their task is carried out, then the problems facing by the people as well as their voices are being heard by the leader. Apart from that, we knew that Yang di-Pertuan Agong had a strong power in our constitution, and we hope that Yang di-Pertuan Agong use his power fairly and equitably so that the power vested in him is well used. Lastly, throughout all these, it turned to Yang di-Pertuan Agong to ascertain that each of the appointed parties did their duty to maintain the good name and sovereignty of our constitution.